Welcome to all the guys that are coming in. Now we're just going to take 1 or 2 more minutes and then we'll probably get going. Just give people time to get in. All right, I think we're going to get going. So firstly, a warm welcome to everyone who's with us today. So this is the KISS Alumni webinar series, and this is our Internships and More section. It's the last one we've done. So if you've been to any of the others, I hope you've enjoyed those. I'm sure this will be a great one too. Just some quick housekeeping before we get started. There'll be no chat function tonight, but any questions you've got can just be submitted for the Q&A tab. I should say, please try and let us know the name of the speaker you want to pose a question to in that, just to make it easier at the end. And this webinar will be recorded too. Other than that, I'm your host. My name's Nathan. I'm a Glasgow Project Subcommittee member, a 2016 to 2017 scholar, and excited to be here and see what's going on. So for speakers, we've got Erin Duffy, who undertook a British Embassy internship. We have Owen Wilson, who did a captioning internship, and Robin Wilson, who did a summer camp counsellor programme. I think we're going to have Erin first. So yeah, Erin, on you go.
Hi everyone, just give me a little minute and I'll share my screen with you. Got a little PowerPoint up. What is it? There we go. Okay, that was meant to be a lot more smooth, but got there eventually. So I'm Erin, and tonight I'm going to be speaking to you about internships and summer jobs. Before I start, I'd just like to thank the KISS Alumni Committee for inviting me along here tonight. It really is an honour to speak, and also for organising this webinar series, which has been wonderfully successful so far, I believe. I'd also like to, before I forget, congratulate my fellow speakers Owen and Robin on their recent success on the Chinese bridge competition. I watched your videos yesterday, they were absolutely hilarious. I would recommend to anyone to go and watch them. So yeah, you should be really proud of yourselves. And that's just some of the amazing things that the Chinese scholars have been getting up to. And I also want to thank all of you here for coming. I know you're there somewhere in the Zoom world, I can't see you, but I know many of you have attended. Thanks for coming along. I've been informed that most of the people here tonight are former KISS alumni scholars or school pupils who are studying Chinese. So really we're all interested in some way in Chinese study and possibly using our Chinese skills in our careers in some sense in the future. And I suppose using your Chinese skills in a career setting involves 3 different steps. 2 of the most obvious of which have already been covered in the webinar series. The first is obviously learning Mandarin, so education, sitting down in a classroom, learning about everything Mandarin language and culture related. The second is, of course, getting a job in which you can use your Mandarin and Chinese skills. But there's a third crucial part in between that kind of links those 2 areas, which is what I want to talk about tonight. And I really think this is the glue that links together the educational and the career side. And without it, you might be missing some of the core skills you need to bring Chinese into your career. And it really is the difference between sitting in a Chinese classroom as a student and being someone who's able to respond to a job advert for, you know, a fluent Chinese speaker needed. And that is, of course, the title of this webinar, which is Internships and Summer Jobs. And I've been very fortunate that I've had a lot of opportunities doing some internships and summer jobs over the years, and I want to tell you a little bit about that. But before that, I want to give you a little bit of background on me. So I first started my Chinese journey when I was 16 years old, when I randomly said to my parents one day, I want to learn Chinese, and they said, why? And I said, I don't know, it just seems really cool. And after a little while, they realised that I was serious, and so they got me Chinese lessons for my 16th birthday. I didn't have the opportunity to learn Chinese in school, so they enrolled me in classes at the Glasgow Chinese School, and they were a little bit worried about their very strange child, but I loved my classes at the Glasgow Chinese School. What we didn't realise before we started was that the Glasgow Chinese School is mainly for children from Chinese speaking backgrounds, from Chinese families, who go there to learn their mother tongue. So I was enrolled in a beginner's class, and I was not only the only child at the beginner's class over the age of 10, but I was also the only child from a non-Chinese background. So as you can imagine, I really stuck out like a sore thumb, which was quite funny. And despite all that, I really did enjoy my Saturdays, and I just bothered the teacher with my incessant questions. I didn't really learn too much, but what it did lead to was my head teacher being aware that I was interested in Chinese study and putting me forward for the 2-week China Immersion course organised by KISS. That's how I found out about the Tianjin scholarship, which I applied to in 2015. I was fortunately successful, and in my 6th year of school, I was deferring my place to study law with Spanish at the University of Glasgow, and in September I embarked on a journey to Tianjin, China for a year, which was one of the best years of my life. It was amazing, and it led to so many great opportunities. But I'm not here to talk about that year, I'm here to talk about what happened afterwards. And that's been my kind of university career, spanning from 2016 all the way up until my final year, my 5th year now. Now, what you'll notice about my kind of little profile there is that I'm a student of linguistics in Spanish at the University of Glasgow, so I no longer study law. I've actually changed my degree 3 times. So you'll notice throughout the course of this talk that I'm someone that likes to get involved in absolutely everything and I can't make my mind up about anything, but I do think it is a positive quality at the end of the day. And also, I don't study Chinese is something else that you'll notice. I chose not to study Chinese when I came back from China. I think the amazing thing about the scholarship is that everyone that came back from China has a totally different perspective and is doing something different and amazing with their Chinese skills, and everyone kind of has a unique experience. And I want to share my unique perspective with you tonight as someone who has managed to centre their Chinese skills through summer jobs and internships instead of through a typical kind of university or educational path. So I'm going to talk about 3 different internships that I've done related to Chinese skills and Chinese study, and I'm just going to give you kind of the bare bones that you need to know about those internships, which is how did I get them, what was involved in them, and why I think they were so beneficial. But before I get into the details, I just want to give you some general advice on internships and summer jobs and how to get them, because as I mentioned before, everyone is different, everyone is unique. I'm not saying that you should go out and do these exact same summer jobs. I'm just giving you an idea of the types of opportunities that are available and how you can go about looking for those opportunities. I also think it's worthwhile to mention here as well that I know that the climate has changed a little bit since I took part in these summer jobs and internships, given the virus situation. I know we all don't like to talk about it, but I know that things have changed, and I can assure you there still are online internships and jobs out there. It's just a case of looking for them, so don't feel disheartened, and I hope some of this advice can help you out in the long run. So how do you find summer jobs and internships? Well, the first piece of advice I can give you is to network. So use the people you know. I know the word network is just a horrible word for everyone. Everyone hates networking, but it's not always what you think. It's not always, you know, going to a conference centre in a suit and tie and handing out business cards to people you don't like. Sometimes it is just a case of using the friends and contacts that you have. You know, if you have a friend who also studies Chinese and has done a really interesting job, you ask them, how did you get that job? What was involved in it? Can you tell me more about it? Can you give me your contacts? Just things like that. Another thing I'd say is to research what's out there. So if you want a particular opportunity but you've never heard of it, it's never came to you, nobody's ever told you that there's an opportunity like that out there, a simple Google search is really great. If you want to work, for example, in the FCO, just look up FCO, Chinese speaking jobs, things like that. Search the internet for hours, for days, apply to everything, and you'll get there eventually. That's what I've learned. Another thing I'd say is let the employer decide if your Chinese is good enough. Most people I know that study Chinese don't think their Chinese is good enough for a professional environment, and for most of them their Chinese really is. And particularly if someone is looking for a Chinese speaker in their organisation, the likelihood is that your Chinese is going to be a lot better than theirs. So let them decide whether you're good enough for the role or not. Another thing I'd say is try everything. Don't pigeonhole yourself into a particular kind of job field. For example, if your interest is I don't know, finance, then don't be scared to do a summer job in something like tourism, because you never know what kind of transferable skills that might bring. So what kind of opportunities are out there? So the obvious is internships, which are always really great because you get kind of specific training. It's a great thing for your CV. Often you get paid, but also look at kind of part-time jobs as well. A lot of these places you can use your Chinese skills, you know, in shops, in offices, and you know, a summer tourism job. Don't overlook those types of opportunities as well. And volunteering is another good one, especially if you're just starting out in your Chinese learning journey. Do some volunteering, teaching in a school or something like that. Teaching is always a really good one. Because if you've never had the opportunity to use your skills professionally, it's a really great place to start. Then why are internships and summer jobs so important? I genuinely think that alongside sitting in a Mandarin class, that's the other 50% of your Chinese education, is using your language skills in a professional context, because the type of vocabulary that you're going to learn is not the same as what you're going to learn in a Chinese classroom. It really helps your confidence. One of the most difficult things with language learning is gaining confidence, and working is one of the top ways to do that, working and using the language professionally. And also it brings you a whole host of transferable skills, which I'm going to go on to talk about in a minute. So the first internship I did, or kind of job I did when I returned from China in 2016, was I worked as a volunteer teacher at the Glasgow Chinese School. I used my contacts and I emailed the director of the Glasgow Chinese School, which was the school that I first studied in at age 16, and told her, I'm now fluent in Chinese. Can I work here? And she said that I could take on a volunteer role as an assistant teacher, which I was definitely not going to turn down, as I'd never managed to use my Chinese skills in a professional environment before. This job involved preparing and delivering weekly Chinese classes to pupils from ages 3 up to the age of 12. And the most important thing about this job for me was that it was in a Mandarin only setting. All of the teachers spoke only Mandarin or Cantonese, which I can't speak, but I had to take part in meetings in Mandarin, interact with my colleagues in Mandarin, and interact with the parents of the children in Mandarin a lot of the time as well. So it was quite daunting, but why was it important to me? Because it gave me teaching experience. I solidified my Chinese skills. I worked with native speakers, and the main thing was I really managed to work outside my comfort zone. And look how cute that little girl was. Oh, I miss her. The next internship I did was with an online language learning company called Radiolingua. I actually found out about this this internship at a KISS alumni event. They didn't pay me to say that, by the way. It was at a KISS alumni event, which is why you should always turn up to all of the KISS events. This is one that Claire, along with some other people, organised. It was a great event, and Mark Pentleton, the CEO of Radiolingo, I was there, and I spoke to him and learned about this internship and applied for it. And that was a really great experience. I was developing their coffee break Chinese, their coffee break Chinese program. They have they teach their main languages are French, Spanish, and Italian, and German. Yeah, and they also do Chinese as well. It's been a while, guys. So yeah, they're a really great company. They're actually one of the top language learning companies in the world. I don't work for them anymore, by the way. I'm just promoting them for free, but I use some of their content, and it's really great. They have free podcasts as well, and it was a proper internship. So I had training on social media management, graphic design, customer service, and all of those skills were really useful to me. I actually worked with Radiolingo all the way up until the end of last year. So although the internship was only 1 year long, I was offered a position with them after the end of my internship to continue developing the Coffee Break Chinese program, which we finally finished developing at the end of last year. And they even gave me a MacBook to take with me in my year abroad to Spain in 2018 so that I could continue to work with them from home. So it also amazingly gave me a great experience of this kind of new digital world. I was using Zoom way back in 2017 to form my colleagues, and so I've already done all this, which strangely was actually a really great experience. So that's why it's been useful to me, all those kind of transferable skills that I gained whilst working with them. The third internship I want to tell you about was when I worked at the British Embassy in Beijing. I worked as a visa writer for the summer there. I learned about that again through KISS. Katie sent out an email. That's why I always say to everyone, respond to Katie's emails. They have good information in there. If the pupils, you don't know who Katie is, she coordinates the scholarship program and sends out emails to us about opportunities and things like that as well. She has a lot of other roles. I've probably totally undersold her. She's a wonderful, magical woman. It was a long application process with an online video interview yet again, bringing us into this digital world with lots of security checks. It was quite daunting. It was the first kind of full-time professional office job that I'd had in my life, and I decided to do that for the first time traveling alone to China. So that was pretty scary, but it really was such a worthwhile experience. It involved reviewing, processing and producing visas for Chinese nationals to enter the UK. So it was a quite high security environment, and I learned a lot, brushing shoulders with the diplomats of Beijing, which was really cool. And why was it useful to me? I learned to, as I said, work full-time in an international setting, and I had the most wonderful summer in China. As you can see, that picture there is me on the Great Wall of China, where I camped with my colleagues from the office for the evening. It was kind of illegal. We weren't really meant to camp there, but the best experience of my life to date is waking up to the sunrise on the Great Wall of China in Beijing. I will never forget that experience. It was really great. So yeah, those are the three internships I chose to talk about, and then here I've just kind of put like a timeline of my university career and the jobs that I've done alongside that to date. And I've kind of highlighted this in gold just to show that since I left Tianjin, since I completed the scholarship in 2016, Chinese study and using my Chinese skills really has been the golden thread which is weaved throughout my life, and it's had a great impact on my career so far. And I guess it just shows that even if you are not able to make Chinese your focus, particularly for your career or for your university, studies, you can still make it happen. You can still bring your Chinese skills into the mix, and it really is a great skill, which makes you a highly employable individual. So you can see that from 2015 to 2020, it has been a long road. There's been a lot of twists and turns. I've done a lot of different, quite random things, because as I said, I like to try everything. That really is my motto. But I guess don't be intimidated by that long road as well. I'm gonna finish with a cheesy Chinese quote. I don't think anyone's done that yet, so of course it's me that's done that, which is 不怕路长，只怕志短, which means don't fear a long road, fear only a lack of ambition, which you guys watching here tonight certainly don't need to fear a lack of ambition, because you're here, you're engaged, and I can't wait to see what you're going to do in the future. And use your contacts. My email address is down at the bottom. Email me if you have any questions or you want to know any more about jobs and internships. I think I've spoken long enough, so thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much for that, Erin. Okay, I think next up now we are going to have Owen. Erin, I think you're still sharing your screen.
Oh yeah, okay. Not very good at this.
Ah, don't worry. Yeah, if you're ready, Owen, take it away.
Yep, I do have a wee PowerPoint. I'm just going to try and load it. Can you see that all right?
It's not up yet. There we go.
Oh, no, I don't know how to control it. F5. It is up. Okay, right, there we go. Oh, yeah, this PowerPoint is not much, by the way. I put it up so he's got something else to look at apart from me. Right, so for those that don't know me, I'm Owen, and I was one of the scholars in 2017 and 18. Actually, my story with Chinese is actually quite similar to Erin's, except I got the Chinese school lessons for my 17th birthday, not my 16th. In 2016, I went on the KISS trip to China, the summer camp, and that's when I got like my proper interest in China. Came back, and in that year when I was in 6th year, went to Chinese school, but I just got a basis in Chinese, but I didn't learn too much. Especially, I only noticed that, especially when I went to China, I really noticed how little I knew. So I learned most of the Chinese I have now while I was in Tianjin, and I managed to get HSK 4, which is less than what a lot of scholars have managed to achieve in their years. That comes back later, like it's a relevant point. Yeah, so both of the things I'm going to talk about today, I actually learned about through the KISS alumni at events that we're having. So the first one is a captioning job I did. It was for a company called TigTag, and they make science videos for kids. They do them in a bunch of different languages, and this was the first time they were trying it out with Chinese. So it was, Erin actually did this one as well. So it was our job to, we were given some scripts, we had to match the audio to the text that we were given, translate any dialogue, sound effects, or onomatopoeia. And yeah, because this was the first time that the company had done Chinese subtitling, we were actually part of the wee group that set up the guidelines for the Chinese subtitles that would be used. So for that, we had to go into Netflix and their guidelines for subtitles and see how they do it. So it was a really cool thing to actually learn about how the captioning industry works, I guess. Yeah, so what I learned lots of new Chinese vocab, first of all. Like I've been used to using Chinese, but ever since coming back from China, my Chinese usage was mostly between other scholars who I would speak Chinese with. So I never really got to use it in a proper setting. This was the first time I used it in a real work setting where the main focus of the work was Chinese. So I got to see a lot of how like Chinese is used in an actual setting. Yeah, and I also learned lots about science. I'm not a very sciencey person. I didn't do much of it in school, but because these videos were science-based, I was translating and like all these sciencey terms and like reading scripts and everything. It was really interesting to learn something else. So it wasn't just Chinese practice I got out of it. I actually learned some other skills as well. Oh, and that was a freelance job as well. So every so often I'd be given, I think it was maybe every 2 weeks or something, I'd be given a list of videos that needed to be done and scripts, and I just had to do them within my own time. So it was really flexible. And the second thing I'm going to talk about is a collaborative translation project I did this summer. So at the start of lockdown in Scotland, I think I got sent this by a couple of different institutions. So Edinburgh Uni sent me something about this project, and I also got an email from the UK Alumni about it. And it was called the Give It a Go online translation workshop, and it was run by the Leeds Centre for New Chinese Writing and Paper Republic. So it was our job we were given a sample of a text, and if you were interested, you just had to translate a wee sample and you sent it off, and then you were invited to participate in this online workshop. So yeah, I did the trial translation, sent it away, and I got invited to participate in this big, massive Zoom call with a bunch of different people with all different kinds of Chinese backgrounds. So some people had been studying Chinese for years and years, and they'd translated things before, and this was just another one of their projects. Some people like me were just starting off with translation completely. So that really helped me learn a lot about how translation is done. And when I was on the Zoom call interacting with these folk, I learned a lot of different translation techniques and a bunch of different ways to go about it, you know. It was a really cool thing to be a part of, and it was completely voluntary as well. Like, it was just an opportunity that came up to practice my Chinese throughout lockdown, and I just took it. But now that I look back, like, I didn't feel like it at the time, but it looks really good, like, to have done something and to have contributed to a published work, and even if it was collaborative with a bunch of other people. So it's a really good thing to put on your CV or anything like that. So yeah, but like, the whole point of me talking about these isn't to really talk about what I've done. It's more to show, demonstrate to you that, like, even though when I was in China, I only got HSK4, which is still an achievement, but it's not like spectacular. And compared to the other scholars who have been to China on the scholarship, I'm pretty much the same level as everyone else. So, So yeah, these opportunities were offered to a bunch of different scholars, but not as many people took them as could have. And it's all about just being confident in your own ability. I know for me, like, you never really feel ready to use your Chinese in a setting. You never really feel like you're good enough or professional enough. You'll always think, oh, there's someone who could do the job better than I am. But if you think about it, not a lot of people study Chinese, like in Scotland at least. There's more and more, but still not a lot. So if you think about your Chinese level, you're very likely to speak better Chinese than most of the people you know. So when a company is advertising, they look for a Chinese speaker, you should really push yourself and say, well, I am a Chinese speaker. Even if you think your Chinese isn't as good as other people's, it's very likely your Chinese is better than a lot of folk in Scotland. And once you've done one of these opportunities, it opens doors to a bunch of others. You've got experience then, and then you can say, oh, well, I actually have done something like that. So yeah, I don't really have much to say. It's just to reinforce that if you do speak Chinese, you should take all the opportunities you get, and don't be afraid to use your Chinese, because it is good enough, even if you only speak a little. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Owen. That was brilliant. I didn't actually know that about that you'd done the collaborative translation. That was really interesting. And lastly, but certainly not least, we have Owen's brother Robin with us as well, who'll be talking about his summer summer camp counsellor internship as well. So Robin, whenever you're ready.
No worries, I'll try and get set up now. Can everyone see that all right?
There we go. Yeah, it's up.
Okay, perfect. So hi guys, I'm Robin. I'm Owen's brother, so if you can guess already, My Chinese learning story is pretty similar to his, and that was a bit inevitable. But like him, I was on the 2017-2018 scholarship, and my language learning interest started the year before when I went on the trip to China. Initially, I didn't really have that much interest in China at all. I was didn't really want to go, but Owen was really insistent. I'd always been to like Chinese culture workshops in school because I liked the languages department. But it was never somewhere I was really desperate to go until the opportunity came up, and I thought over it a bit, and Owen done some convincing, and eventually ended up going to the trip. And when I was there, I didn't want to come home, and said to myself, I'm going to have to find any chance I can to get back. So I went to Chinese school as well, like Owen and Erin, did some stuff there, and then was lucky enough to get the scholarship. And that's kind of where the whole proper learning started. But enough about that. Today I'm going to be talking about my experience volunteering at a summer camp in China. Just a disclaimer, like I went with a specific summer camp that was along with a certain company, but I'm not going to name names or whatever specific company because there are so many different ones that offer different things, and I think it would be unfair for me to specify if one was better than the other. So I'm just going to go about what my experience was like and what I gained from it. So what I'm going to talk about today is why I went to camp, what my experience in camp involved and what a lot of others are likely to involve, then some negatives, and then the positives that definitely vastly outweigh the negatives, and then what I've generally gained and how it's kind of changed my thinking and why I would recommend the experience to anyone else. So why did I choose to go to camp? So unlike a lot, or I would say most of the other scholars, immediately after coming back from the scholarship, I didn't have a place at uni. I'd initially planned to go back to China and study, but I didn't really find an affordable opportunity to do it until I'd already gotten a place at university in Scotland. So I decided to just like stay here. But for that year, I ended up getting a job in Tesco, where I did get to use my Chinese, but it was no substitute for living in China and using it every day. I really missed being with all my friends and studying and just life over there. And I also felt that my Chinese was, getting a lot worse. You go from a setting where you're using it every day to a setting where you're attending maybe one class a week and getting to use it every now and again in a Tesco that you work at in Kilmarnock. So I was kind of really down. It wasn't a great time. But I always kept myself busy, and I've always had a love of sports. And I had a part-time job coaching table tennis to some kids because I've competed in competitive table tennis for a few years now. And just by chance, one day I was at a tournament, and one of my opponents was like a representative for this camp company. And he said, "Oh, you're into sports, you can speak Chinese. Here's an opportunity. We've recently kind of got into contact with camps in China, and we're looking to send folk over there." So I was like, "Oh, that sounds great." And it was kind of my worries were solved because I wanted to go back to China, but I just didn't know how I'd be able to afford it. So I ended up going to a camp in Tiandalho, which is kind of I wouldn't say small, but it's small compared to Chinese city standards. It's a little place around this big lake near Hangzhou in kind of southeastern China. You can see the photos here. It was really, really nice. The scenery was like unreal, but the weather was very, very hot the whole time. It was really hot, really humid, and really easy to get sunburn if you didn't wear sun cream. But yeah, but it was really nice. And here's some more photos of it. That hot air balloon is actually the place where our camp was situated. Was also, it doubled as a hot air balloon club, so you used to see those going up every so often. And this picture in the top left here is the kind of buildings where we stayed with the kids. So what did my experience at camp involve? So primarily it was looking after the campers. So you're with them 24/7, and you were responsible for their general well-being. So you had to make sure that they got up in time, brushed their teeth in the morning, changed clothes, showered. And when you weren't kind of doing the kind of nanny stuff, you were coaching them sports. But not just sports, but there were other activities as well, like magic or music, arts and crafts, or even laser tag as well. So this was the daily routine at my camp. So at 7:30 to 8:10, you would get up, then you would line up, go to do a flag raising ceremony where you'd raise a flag and sing the national anthem, the Chinese national anthem. You'd eat breakfast, then you would do 2 activities which were set in stone as a timetable for the kids. And then you would have your afternoon rest, which you really needed to use. Well, you'd have lunch, then you'd have your afternoon rest, which you really needed to use to nap, because there was hot days and it was really too hot to do any activities for that kind of 3-hour period in the middle of the day. And then the kids would do what we called their electives. So they would basically get to choose 1 of 4 activities at the start of the week, and then they would go to that activity with the plan of kind of developing a skill over the week. And then it was like Zushra Hodong, which was their, what did we call it? We called it flex. So they just got to choose anything they wanted. And that was probably the funnest part of the day, because there were activities like water slide or laser tag, or it was just kind of less set in stone. It was more fun. Then you would lower the flag, eat dinner, and then you'd have an evening activity which ranged from like a glow-in-the-dark party to having like an ice cream social, where they would kind of make this kind of mini market and they would sell stuff. It was quite interesting. And then you would go to bed really early, before 10 o'clock. And you might think that we went to bed at like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and then didn't sleep till like midnight. But no, as soon as you hit the bed, you were asleep, because the whole day is quite exhausting. So I'm going to talk about the negatives first, because just to get them out of the way. And this really unflattering picture, probably the worst one I've ever seen taken of me, is that it's very tiring. And this was me after one of the activities in the middle of the day, just to show you how tiring it can get in the hot sun, running about after kids. It could be stressful as well. The kids are kids, they often fight. And as well, there's not a lot of privacy involved in that specific camp, but I feel it will be the same in a lot of other camps in China as well. You stay in the same room as the kids, so anything you had to do was kind of around the kids. And it could be, what made it the most tiring is what if you had to get the kids up for like 7:30, you had to be up maybe half an hour, an hour earlier than that. So I was up at 6:30 every day, so I had time to shower myself and then get them up. So it could be tiring in that respect, but it was worth it, I think, for the positives. And there's lots. The main positive is that it's really fun. I'm a really sporty person. I really like just running about, having a good time, and it allowed me to thrive, just kind of unleash your inner child a bit, and just coach sports, which you love to do. Discover places you might never have otherwise. So Chennai, I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know it was a place. I didn't even really consider going to Hangzhou before. But you wouldn't believe how nice the little town is. You know, the camp we were situated at was maybe half an hour taxi from the town, but it was actually really, really fun. Really nice little place, and it's somewhere I definitely want to go back to in the future. And I never would have known about it otherwise. And you found these lovely little kind of restaurants, or kind of water parks, activity centres. I'd really plan on going to in the future. There are a lot of funny stories with the kids. Like, they're kids, so kids are just really wacky. They come up with just the most amazing things, and it's just I've got countless funny stories that I can't bore you with right now, but it's really good memories it made. Great for fitness. I thought it was really good for fitness because you're in a set routine. You're eating fairly healthy meals, apart from maybe on Friday when they gave you pizza, but you're eating just kind of rice, your general Chinese breakfast and lunch, and you were also exercising the whole day. So I've never felt, more healthy or happy in my life, So on the health side, that's a really good positive for it. It was a great confidence booster because, when you're made responsible for all these kids, they kind of look up to you. And I don't know, it's good. It's a good feeling having these kids listen to you, and you've been able to command your authority over them. You know that you can take up positions of responsibility, and before I wasn't really confident I could be in that kind of situation, but now I'm confident I could do it. You make lots of new friends. I speak to most of the friends I made at camp almost every day back here. I still go on phone calls. I phone their family members so they can teach me about their different dialects or where they're from. And it was just because you're working, you have the shared experience of working with these kids, getting stressed at the same time, getting tired at the same time. You can really bond quite closely in a really short period of time. I was only there for 3 months. but it was enough time to make what I see as lifelong friends. And why I've put it in bold is I think the best thing that happened about camp for me, and the biggest positive, was the Chinese practice it gave me. And that's the main reason I wanted to talk about this experience today, because I think Erin pointed to it earlier. You learn certain Chinese phrases, Chinese words in university. Obviously, university or classes are going to give you a huge boost in Chinese, but the real learning comes from real life situations, from doing jobs. And I felt that working with Chinese kids was the biggest opportunity. It was the biggest vocabulary eye opener in my mind I'd ever experienced, because you go to uni, you learn how to say, oh, I'm going to do my CV. You learn how to say, I go to the park with my friends or whatever. But you don't learn how to say things like, teacher, I need to go to the toilet, I need to pee, I need to poo. These words that are really quite essential, but you never would have thought about learning them before or looking them up on a dictionary. And it was also good for learning. All the different kids came from different different provinces in China. So you had people speaking Dongbei Hua or Yueyu or like Wenzhou Hua. A lot of them I found really incomprehensible, but it was really interesting getting to pick up their dialect words. And when you use these dialect words to actual Chinese people now, they get super impressed and they think your Chinese is really kind of native. And here are a few photos of the friends I've made in camp, and most of which I still talk to today. So what I took out of this experience was a much deeper understanding of the culture, especially how Chinese children think, and how Chinese parents think as well, because they're really kind of protective of their kids, like to a really obsessive extent. And it's not a bad thing, it's just a really interesting difference. It's not quite the same as over here. It's quite an intense kind of, they want to know what's going on. And I just felt going to camp and experiencing that, meeting the parents, meeting the kids, allowed me to really immerse myself more in a culture, more than I ever had before. As I said before, learn things you never would have in a classroom, like the dialect words, like, you know, the kind of silly things, but also kind of funny things like what Chinese kids, what they do for hobbies. I thought nowadays most kids were, especially in China, were really glued to their technology, really glued to like their kind of video game stuff. But who would have thought Chinese kids really love to play poker? I didn't know that. It was just a really kind of funny wee quirk I found. Chinese kids love to play poker. They don't bet or nothing. They just do it for the joy of playing poker. I can't play poker, but it was just really funny trying to watch them do it. One of the big things that camp did, it changed my perspective on what I want to do, like with a career. I still don't know for sure what I want to do, but I found that working in camp with kids, I really thrived in that environment. Before, I always thought, oh, if you do a language, if you study a language degree, you're almost definitely going to end up in teaching. You know, it seems to be the main thing. You look at language teachers in school, a lot of them didn't maybe plan to become teachers in the end of it. They just ended up doing it because they had to. So I always said to myself, no, I definitely don't want to be a teacher. I'll do anything but that. But I found that from my experience coaching table tennis in Scotland, and then coaching it in China and working with kids in China, and really finding out that it's an environment I really enjoy being in, and I get a lot of kind of like fulfillment out of, really made me reconsider and think to myself that teaching might be something I want to go into in the future. And it was, you know, it kind of opened my mind to that possibility. And most importantly, I suppose, I took out some really nice memories from it. These two pictures here are letters that the kids wrote. Just two of the letters, but you got plenty more. You had kids, like they would send you letters back, or they would make things for you and send them to you. And it's kind of really nice. It shows you that they really appreciated the work you put into them. And while you did get stressed out your box at them from time to time, it really was worth it in the end. They really were all nice kids. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that, and I'm happy to take any questions. As I say, I can't give any specific details about where I went, if that's what people were interested in, but anything else is fine.
All right, thank you so much for that, Robin. So I hope everyone has enjoyed these three talks tonight, because I found them personally very interesting. So now we're going to move into the Q&A session. And so if you've got any questions in this point, still keep sticking them in the Q&A tab and we'll get around them all. But I've taken a note of some anyway, so I'll just make a start. But one posed to yourself, Erin, was what sort of tips have you got for networking generally?
to unmute myself. I think, as I said before, like the idea of networking like really like gives me the fear. Like I really hate the idea of networking. Some people are naturally very good at it. Personally, I'm not. I get quite nervous. I say silly things that I don't really mean. I don't really kind of sell myself in the way that I should, and I find it quite embarrassing going up and speaking to people. But I think what I've found is that networking, as I said, and my talk isn't really what you expect it to be. Most of the networking that has been useful to me has been, for example, keeping in touch with Natalie from the year above, who went to the scholarship in 2014. A lot of the jobs that she did, I was really interested in and emailed her about and asked her, and she helped me a lot, for example, with my British Embassy application. Keeping in touch with people like Katie who know about the opportunities that are available to Chinese speaking Scottish students. She'll be able to tell you what's going on, and reminding like everyone that like for example family members, friends, by the way I speak Chinese, by the way if you know anyone that is looking for a Chinese speaker, I'd say like look for contacts and places to network if you're like me, that is in like kind of unexpected places. It doesn't need to be in a big kind of group setting. But I'd also say like attend events as much as possible, look for like-minded people. Networking doesn't only come from the people in the rung above you, it also comes from people on the same level as you, who can, people like Robin and Owen who've just shared their experiences there. Like I'm like, okay, wow, I'll go look up that summer camp, do you know what I mean? Like, and you can learn from your peers as well.
Great, thanks so much. I think for yourself, Erin, and Owen, and Robin, if you went as well, but one question is, how would you guys compare the experience of studying Chinese at the Chinese school versus when you're in Tianjin on the scholarship? If anyone's got much to say about that.
I think myself and Owen's experience might have been slightly different from Erin's because it was the year after. We had a class of, there were other foreigners in the class. I don't mean to say foreigners, we were Scottish, but it was, me, Owen, another Scottish guy, and then 2 Cantonese background Scottish people as well. So we were all in that classroom trying to learn Mandarin, and the teacher spoke English in that classroom. I think that was the biggest difference. Because we had 0 level at the time, she just spoke, and the teacher she said it was part of her like uni or part of some work experience she wanted to do to improve her English. She decided to volunteer to teach. It was kind of a mutual thing. She taught in English primarily. That's the biggest difference. In China, everything is 100% Chinese. You get chucked way into the deep end, but I think that's definitely the best for learning your Chinese. Babies don't, like when babies learn languages, they can't speak anything. If their parents speak to them in the language, they keep speaking to them to it, and eventually they just get it. And that's kind of the experience of being in China. When the teacher tells you in Chinese to open your book, you don't understand what she's saying, but you see that everyone else in the class is opening their books. They go, okay, that must mean open my book to this page, and you just pick it up slowly like that. That would be the biggest difference, I would say. Unless the other 2 want to add anything else.
Yeah, anything else to add?
No, I don't think so. As Robin said, my experience was quite different, so it was quite similar to my experience in China. It's quite immersive, so yeah.
Okay. And just before we go on, I wondered, Robin, would you mind just sharing a little bit about the Chinese Bridge Camp for those who don't know much about it? Because obviously your news is great, but it'd be cool if everyone knew exactly what it is you did.
So Chinese Bridge is the global kind of Chinese competition for non-native speakers of Chinese. So it's split up into 3 categories. You usually have your performance, your speech, and then a question round. You get judged by a panel of judges, and then the top 4 in the UK get chosen to move on to the next round, which is normally take place in China, which would be the European finals. So you get all the European top 4s, they compete to represent Europe, and then they compete in the proper world's big semi-final and final. This year is a bit different because obviously the current situation, we had to do it online. So we didn't get a lot of preparation time at all. I think they told us like 2 or 3 weeks before that it was going to be this day, and if you want to take part in it, you just got to get ready for it. Right. So they changed it a little bit. We had to do our speech as usual. our questions as usual. So they gave us a bank of questions, we had to learn them. But this year we had to make a video, just a video about anything to do with Chinese. And me and Owen chose to take like a funnier approach. A lot of the other contestants chose like a kind of serious thing. And then you still have to do your talent. So mine was singing Zhongguo Hua, and then Owen's was doing a stand-up comedy routine. So it was fun. And the competition was just on the Saturday that passed there. So I got the second prize, which means I get to go through to the next stage, and then Owen got the most eloquent prize. But it's really stressful because I have until tomorrow to fill in a certain sheet that I haven't done yet, as well as make a video for the 25th, and then do the next round next Tuesday. So it's all moving really fast.
Oh wow. Oh, fair enough. That's brilliant, guys. I'm very excited now to go and see Owen this comedy stand-up routine. I almost can't imagine what it would be like. It absolutely means I need to see it now. That's brilliant. For you, Erin.
I'd say if anyone's wanting to do it though, like go it, like do it. Sorry, just like
no.
If anyone's thinking about do it. Like what I learned most was knowledge about China, because I had to study a bunch for the questions. So like even if you're not doing it for the Chinese, do it for learning about China. It's good fun.
Great, thanks so much. Erin, for you, one question was, of all the things you've done, what's been your favourite internship or job related to Chinese?
That is a hard question. I do think possibly the Radiolingua internship was my favourite, just because it was so different. I didn't even know that jobs like that existed, and I always say, like, I hope he doesn't happen to be watching, because that would be really embarrassing, but Mark Pentleton genuinely is like, I want to be him, like, because I think like he's made a career out of learning languages. And basically he creates content in which normally either he's teaching a language that he already speaks, or he's employing a native speaker to create materials with him where he learns the language, which is what he did with Chinese. So people that make a career out of being a polyglot, like, I didn't even know that was a thing. I now do. I follow them all on Instagram, and I want to be one of them, because, as I said before, like, languages are kind of my thing and I want to learn as many as possible. But that kind of opened up that world to me, and kind of gave me the opportunity to engage with other learners and talk about one of my favourite topics in the world, which is just studying Chinese resources, the quirks of the Chinese language. So it was really niche. It was really fun, and I learned a lot.
Great, thanks so much. For everyone now, what would you, because obviously you've all very kindly mentioned how a lot of these internships and jobs have come through KISS alumni events and KISS events in general, but out with those places, do you guys, like, have you found opportunities elsewhere? I know you mentioned through your networks, but has there been any resources or websites or anything you've used that has helped you find these opportunities, or find things like that even if you didn't take them?
One thing I would say, I would kind of touch on this, like, when I was talking as well, is like, if you're looking for quite a specific opportunity, like, there's no harm in just doing a basic Google search and seeing what comes up. Like, sometimes you do need to kind of like traipse through all of the dark corners of the internet. But but for example, I'll give you an example. So last year, I came back from Spain. Is that last year? Yeah. I came back from Spain, and I thought, I really want to be a tour guide. I'd done a little bit of traveling. I'd been on a couple of walking tours, and I was like, being a tour guide just seems like the best job in the world. It's a great way to use my languages. So I basically just did a Google search of tour guide companies in Glasgow. I emailed every single one of them, and it took me months, like, to finally get a reply from someone and get a company that actually got the message and then did reply and then did have a vacancy open. But eventually, after months, I got a job as a tour guide, and I'm still working as a tour guide now, and I'm hopefully going to be able to do some tours in Spanish and Chinese when the tourists come back as well. So I think that the experience really did show me, like, the benefits of a basic Google search.
Lovely. Great. Now, a question again for you all is, how have the various internships and opportunities you've had and have spoken about contributed to your employability skills?
I think the main thing is that the Chinese speaking is obviously something that's going to stand out immediately at any interview or application. But often you'll get, like, for example, in Tesco, they'll ask you questions like, name a time where you had to resolve a hardship, resolve a tough situation. For me, anyway, working with kids, there were lots of tough situations. That's just kind of inevitable. But you know, when you say to an employer, "Oh, there were these kids fighting, or there was a bullying incident or something," and I had to use complete Chinese to resolve this situation, not only does it make them think your Chinese is like, not only does it kind of reassure them that your Chinese is good enough, but it also shows that you can take on kind of complex problems, not only in English but in Chinese.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Great. Anyone else like to chip in?
Yeah, I'd say, like, similar to Robin's, it wasn't necessarily the experience itself, it was more like the skills I showed through that experience. Like, yeah, for the collaborative translation, for example, I was working with a bunch of different people. So when I went for job interviews after having done that, that was something I always highlighted, and they seemed quite interested that I'd done something as big as a bunch of other people.
Mm-hmm. Lovely. All right, we've got time for maybe one or two more questions. One I've got for you, Robin, is related to the camp, so say what you're able to say on it. But the question is, what sort of costs were involved in the summer camp program? Did you have to pay for your own flights, etc., or what was that sort of thing provided? And also, separate from that, did you have a chance to travel around after working at the camp?
So I went via a recruitment agency that you would pay. I think that it was total of £500 you paid, so it was 2 installments, 250, and for that they would set up your flights and your transport to and from the camp. So I was actually in the middle of typing an answer to the question, but I'll just answer it here. So with the chance to travel before and after camp, the initial, like the recruitment agency initially planned to book the flights basically the day before camp started, and then the flight home the day after camp ended. But we asked them to move the date back because you have to get a cultural exchange visa for it, so it's 90 days. You had to pay that cost yourself though for the visa. So it was a 90-day stay, but they only wanted you kind of in it for 70 days or whatever. So I'd asked them to move the flights back and forward so I could extend the full 90 days for the visa, and they were happy to comply with that. So I ended up getting the full 90-day stay until in the very it's a bit disaster for me. It's nothing to do with the camp or the company. It was just a kind of funny story that I missed my first flight because my stopover got delayed, so I missed that flight. And then we got to China, and Alex's bags were missing. They were stuck in Paris, so that was a disaster. And then on the way back, it was on my 90th day of my visa stay, and the flight got cancelled. So I didn't want to overstay my visa, so we were up until God knows what time in the morning, phoning KLM asking them to get us a flight on that day. Otherwise, we'd overstay our visa, and it would have been a problem. So we ended up going. We were meant to go to Amsterdam. We ended up going to Paris. Met Lewis Capaldi in the airport, and then went back to Scotland. So it was a funny story, but it worked out. The cost themselves, it was 500 for the company to do all that stuff for you, and then another 100 or so for the visa.
Lovely, cool. And you're also asked, did you generally speak Chinese at the camp with the children, or to the children, sorry, or were you expected to use English?
So this is it's quite funny. So as a foreigner going to China and doing this experience, you're not expected to speak Chinese. You're expected to be the kind of foreign face that speaks to the kids in English and lets them practice their English. But and we were reassured, not so much the non-Chinese speakers were reassured by the company and by the camp that the kids had a very high level of English. Most of them went to international schools and they could understand. This was just not true at all. Most of the kids didn't speak a lick of English, which was great for me. I loved it because it was just a better chance to practice your Chinese. Obviously, the kids, I used to ask the kids every week if they would prefer me to speak to them in English to practice. and they almost always just said no. I was like, great.
Wow.
It was more almost, apart from like the Americans that are also there and only speak English, you with the kids' time is almost 100% just Chinese.
Right.
Complete immersion.
Wow. That's really cool. Cool. I think that is all the questions that I think they've all been answered, which is fantastic. So just before we go, yes, I'll share my screen quick. Answer. There we go. So thank you so much for being with us here tonight. So if you want to become a KISS caller, then you know what to do. If you go and find us at the Confucius Institute for Scotland Schools, you can see the links there. And that way you can keep in touch with all the things that we're doing. And again, if you want to see what the KISS alumni are doing or drop us an email, you can see the links there. We've got our own website too, and we've got sort of videos about the scholarship properly, sort of detailing some of our experiences, a packing guide. So we've got lots of good stuff coming out there, and on our social medias too. You can find us at the KISS Alumni on Facebook, on Instagram and YouTube, where this recording will be going as well. And I think that is everything. So thank you so much for coming, and we hope to see you again soon.